And with no further ado, I would like to introduce you Professor Mohamed Saib Musette. He's a steering committee member of the Miscoe Regional Euromed Niche Network and an Algerian sociologist. He's the research director of the Research Division, Human Development and Social Economy at the Applied Economic Center for Development in Algiers. His fields of interest cover youth, the labor market, and international migration since this millennium. As a researcher, he has participated in more than 100 conferences with universities in Algeria, Africa, and Europe. He has published some 50 articles in scientific national and international journals and 10 collective works, including 4 on international migration. He has also, as an ILO official, coordinated a program on labor migration in the Maghreb region. He also works as a national consultant for several ministerial departments of the Algerian government. He acts as the national expert for Algeria for the Euromed migration program. And he has also conducted from technical reports as an international expert for the United Nations agencies, the European Union and African Union, his fields of competences. So with this, and before I give the floor to Professor Musette, I would like to remind the participants of this event that you can ask questions via the chat that we have in the bottom panel on Zoom. And Professor Musette will happily answer them after he finishes his presentation. So with no further ado, I give the floor to Professor Musette. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you very much, Juan Carlos. I think it will be my first time in Barcelona, or virtually in Barcelona, but probably by next time I will be with you in Barcelona. This paper, I think, has its own history. Some 2 years ago, I've presented the same paper to the press in Algeria. Later on, a month later, in the beginning of 2019, I presented the same similarly to the Ministry of Home of Algeria and also with another meeting, the 5+5 Ministry of Defense meeting. So you see, this paper is improving now. Up to now, I have 12 steps which decline the process of irregular migration. So my paper, I've got some 24 slides. Introduction, I'll give you meant by migration, irregular migration, and then I'll set the frame with the 12 steps, entrance, black box, and exit. Brief conclusion, and we will question and answers. We understand by international migration, we must bear in mind the recommendation of UNDESA, of the United Nations, which means that international migration is defined as the person who changed his or her country of usual residence. And there is 2 time frames, more than 3 months and more than 1 year for permanent and temporary migrants. This is important mention because this definition has been adopted some 20 years ago. And this year, the UNDESA is revising these recommendations. So probably we'll have a new definition by next year. About migration is stock, the latest number released by UNDESA, it is 281 million in 2020. So it rose up from 173 million in 2000 And most of migrant here, within the stock of migrant, about around 70% of migrant workers, as ILO noted it some years ago. This is important definition because we'll see later on with irregular migration, this definition will be used in some cases. First, this table gives us a stock of migration from 1990 up to 2020. As we see, migration, the rate of African migration of the world is practically the same. There's been only 1 point growth from 1990 from 25.6, 13.5 up to 14.5 in 2020. Just keep this record in mind. African migration is not rising very much in terms of rate. And from North Africa, so although we have a double global migration in North Africa, the rate remains very low in regard to world migration growth. What about irregular migration? What you know about regular migration, the stock of regular migration. About irregular migration, we present you 3 definitions based on 3 international conventions. The first one is International Conventions of ILO. It dates in 1975. Here we'll know that migrants are supposed to be irregular, may be found during the journey, on arrival, or during the period of residence of unemployment. If people during these periods are contravening relevant international, multilateral, or bilateral, they ought to be classified as irregular migration. A second definition is given where migrants in irregular situation are protected by the UN Convention 1990. As you see on the map, most European countries have no action. We have only 56 state parties who signed this convention, and no action about 130. And most European countries do not sign this convention. Another convention which is important to know about irregular migration, it refers to the smuggling of migrants. And it is given by the Article 3 of the Protocol of Smuggling Migrants, the United Nations Conventions on Transnational Organized Crime. This is also important because smugglers is an important actor in irregular migration. One more definition, but it is now the European one, defining migration according to Europe has been subject to considerable debate. But what we must note in this, that terms like illegal, undocumented, non-documented, unauthorized can have different connotations. And even clandestine migration, which is highly connoted. Due to this and association with criminality, as Europe's European Home Affairs said, the term illegal migration should be avoided because most irregular migrants are not criminals. This is important to note because most irregular migrants are victims and not criminals. Just a difference between regular and irregular migration. Irregular migration, we have can be said that the entry, irregular residence, irregular employment. Even regular migration can go in and out of irregularity. We can close the border, cross the border legally, and be illegal during the stay. Exception for application of migrants applied for asylum, they can cross border even irregular at the host country. Before setting the frame for my steps, I just give you a broad idea of, again, some more figures about data of irregular migration. Up to now, we have no valid world data for migration. We have African migrants in irregular situation in Europe. Here we have the trends, and here again we can see from 2017 there's been a slight rise in the rate of migration from 13.5 up to 14.2. And we come to my 12 steps. My 12 steps start with the entry box. In the entry box, we have three steps: a desire to migration, the preparedness of migration, and the decision one. Within the black box, there is a choice of routes to be for migration, and sometimes migrants are arrested before they take the routes, and another one, a sixth one, is a missing migrants. We'll go in details with each step. And arrival in Europe, it is in orange, like maybe a refused at entrance, maybe detained or deported to the country of origin. The exit box, we have three more steps. Asylum refused, so asylum seekers say the demand refused, so they will turn into irregular migrants. And the two last steps, it will be regularization or naturalization of migrants. Let's go over the first one. The step one, it is about the desire to migrate. You know, up to now, there are many studies about migrant desire to migrate. This we can have the Arab barometer give us for Arab countries, and we have got to see the Sahwa survey run in 5 countries, North African countries, and MENA countries, including Lebanon. And we have the Boston study recently released to say about some 80% of people desire to move abroad. A desire in itself, as we can see, the Afrobarometer gave on 34 African countries, there were that an average of 37% has a plan to migrate. And from Africa, it is 29% African, North African express their intention. But expressing their intention has no real impact on migration. We can have the desire to migrate, but are we really the means to migrate? And through what roads? What will be the way? As we see, the Sahwa survey gives us the intention of youth in North Africa, the Middle East, the 5 countries, they have the intent, if they have the opportunity to do so, to move even irregularly. And the highest rate, 35%, is from Morocco, the lowest rate from Egypt, up to 5% only. Preparation, as I've said, we have the Gallup survey. The Gallup survey shows us in the first chart. Here we have only 2% of people who desire to migrate, who really prepared to migrate. And this is very important because what we have seen, many people would like to migrate. This is a dream for most people, but really preparedness is in only with 2 or 3%. Arab Barometer in 2020 gave us some countries chosen for people who like to migrate. I'm sorry, turn back. As you see from the 3 North African countries, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, France seem to be the first top place where they'd like to migrate. Canada comes second for all of them. Germany, Spain and France, Spain and Italy. These preparations, we know that for North Africans, it is have a long history of colonization, geographical proximity, and social networks are rather important during this phase of preparation. Decision making, the third step. I think the main tool to cut the decision making, it is we can see it through the visa. A latest trend, which can see some 85% of visa applications were refused in 2019. And the top migrant country was Algeria with 40% refusals. The people with or without visa, if people want to migrate, have a high desire to migrate, are prepared to migrate, they will do so. With visa, they will either stay. Without visa, the only option will be by maritime route, that is involved in Haraga. And what we see in the second black box, we entered the black box with the 4 steps. 3 routes generally, and we can use Eurostat data, saying land, sea, and air routes. And we see by land, most irregular migrants occurred through land routes. By sea, only 1.7%. Up to now, we have seen about the decision, the desire, preparation, decision, and the route chosen to migrate. Up to now, we go to the step 5. We are in phase not with migrants, but with migrants to be potential migrants. Because we have seen the first definition, you are migrants, you have the status of migrants unless you have 3 months stay in the host country. But these migrants to be, these potential migrants who are apprehended before or deported from North Africa, they are not migrants, they are just potential migrants. And such data give us another way to discuss migration, because literacy statistic reveals, this is by different countries in North Africa, show the efforts of these countries of origins to fight against irregular migration. From Morocco, they detected some 27,000 irregular migrants and dismantled more than 60 smuggling networks. Again, in Algeria, 8,000 Algerian Saragos was apprehended, and some 3,000 foreigners arrested, 190 smuggling networks, and 619 smugglers arrested. This is provided by the General Gendarmerie Générale in March 2021. From Tunisia, we have no decent data available, but from 2011 up to 2016, police arrested some 14,000 people trying to migrate. And in the general narratives, we call them migrants. Those arrested, we call them migrants. As for me, they are not yet migrants. They are migrants to be. I would say the 6 steps where some of them will be missing while crossing the Med Seas. IOM gave us a map, a world map of missing migrants all over the world. It is not only on the Med Seas, but most part of the world, as you see on this map. As for the Med Seas, in 2021, as we can see, we have some 599 drowned people in the Med Seas. It is higher than 2020. Proportion of deaths and attempted crossing. So these people, these migrants, are being stopped on the shores by local police, local security forces, or drowned in the Med. They are not migrants. We call them Araga, but they are not migrants. They never migrate. They never reach the northern shores. And even arriving in the northern shores by all roads now, we see the trends from 2008 up to 2017. For the 4 countries, Algeria, Morocco is on the top with more than 40% of people trying it formed part of the 618,000 migrants in irregular situation in Europe. But only 13% came from North Africa. You say more than 77% come from elsewhere. Step 7 from migrant countries. Here, the trends from 2010 up to 2019. Here again, we have the 3 countries. Only from Haraga, these are by sea route. Data from Frontex. It gave us a very low level of migrants from Algeria during this period. At level, highest of migrants, which rate climbed to 1,500 came from Morocco. But what happened during the 2020, during the COVID period? Irregular migrants from Maghreb countries by sea border climbed to a very highest rate. And this is quite paradoxical because the border is closed, there's no flights, no visa, and most migrants travel by sea. And during this period, as we can see, from January to December last year, Algeria, on the month of July, Tunisia has been on the top, and Algeria has been on the top during the month of May. And from October to December, most of Moroccans who tried to cross and have been apprehended in the North Sea. Step 9, invite to return. Here again, we can use Frontex data to see that most of irregular migrants were nearly 300,000 irregular migrants were given return decision by EU members in 2019. Of this figure, only nearly 140 people effectively return, either forcibly or voluntarily. We can see on this graph, as for our concern for Morocco, for Algeria and Tunisia. Deported to the country of origin, last decade, of some 40,000 migrants who have been deported from Europe, most of them from Morocco. And the second from Algeria and third from Tunisia. And we get to the exit box now, so it's 10. Algerian asylum demand in the UAE has increased by twofold from 2011 up to 2020. Morocco has been, Moroccan demand is multiplied by 5 up to 2016 and then declined. Tunisia slight fall, exceptional surge into 2011. And what we see, the data revealed by the UNHCR, 3 of them, nearly 10,000 migrants were refused asylum application. On these results return to, as I've said before, asylum seekers have right to live, have the right to stay. But when the application is refused, they turn to be irregular migrant. What happened next? Either there is a process of regularization, step 11, and regularization doesn't mean citizenship. We'll see naturalization next. Types of regularization are also one range of criteria required from migrants. And what we can say is nearly these last 20 years, nearly 6 million migrants have been regularized with some 70 programs within European countries. During the COVID, this is the last one. In Italy, we have 220,000 people applied for regularization. Let's see, just under the third of the estimate, you'll see 690,000. In case we observe in Spain, there have been two types of measures concerning the treatment of migrants during the COVID outbreak. And we've learned that there were approximately 430 migrants who are in Spain. That is 20% of total migrant population. Such data must be compared to Eurostat data we give first. As you see, the data from countries differ from data from Eurostat. On the whole, Eurostat data show that there were some 700,000 irregular migrants in all the EU 28 countries. But now what we learn during the regularization process launched in Italy, there was nearly 700,000 undocumented migrants in Italy, and approximately the same, some more than 430 migrants in Spain. So these two countries, we have nearly 1 million migrants in irregular state in only two countries. It's different from Eurostat. So when counting, when measuring migration, we must bear in mind that we need national data and not the global data, which is collected by Eurostat. Naturalization, this is the last exit. And this step brings a change to the legal status from foreigner to citizenship with equal rights, but the migrant origin may live up to 3 generations. Even naturalized, you remain migrants. Perhaps after 3 generations, you can be considered as real, total citizenship. Have a look at the data collected through Eurostat for the last decades. Out of 9 million migrants naturalized in Europe, African naturalized, 70% came from North Africa. The 3 North Mediterranean countries, it is Italy, Spain, and France, gave from 40% citizenship to Africa. And on the chart, we can have a look, most near 66% of Moroccans obtain naturalization of European countries. To conclude, just 4 messages on my part. I think with the COVID, we've learned. Last night I learned that in France, some 2,000 migrants have been naturalized because they were in the front line to fight against the COVID. You see, rhetoric must change from discrimination to solidarity during this COVID pandemic. A synthesis I have made from the different stages of the process of irregular migration. The 12-step forms a logic framework for more in-depth analysis. Up to now, I would like not to give any takeaway, not yet, because many more irregular migration are unknown. How many migrants to be have crossed all the 12 barriers, we don't know. And a 13th step is in the construction of my world. As you probably noted, this presentation is limited only to migrants. Smugglers is not mentioned now. I'm working on the third step to see what happened in the world of smugglers. And this will be the next step, probably will give us some economics foundation of irregular migrants. Thank you very much for your attention. And I don't know whether we have still some more time.
Yes, we do.
Okay. I've taken some more time than usual because I was supposed to take only 55 minutes. I think that I'm sorry because there are many more data which I would like to present to you. Anyway, you will have the paper, we will have all the tables which will be published by IBEI. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Musette. Actually, you did very well with the time, so no need to apologize. Actually, you were great, so no problem about that. Thank you very much for a very complete, a very interesting presentation. So now I would like to open the floor to questions or comments from our audience that Professor Musette's presentation triggered. So as you know, you can write in the chat or in the Q&A option. I don't see any questions so far. Okay. So while we wait for the audience to make questions, I have some questions that I would like to ask you, Professor Musette. And I'm quite intrigued by this category of migrants to be that you use in your presentation. I know and I understand that it comes from a legal perspective or how it is defined by international organizations according to the length that these people have been outside of their countries of origin. But I mean, to me, I mean, when you are already in the process, it's I don't know. I mean, I mean, what is your take on this definition given by international organizations? Do you think that it's useful for the phenomenon that you are studying? Do you think that this could be improved in some way or another? That's the question that I would like to ask you. Could you unmute, please? Thank you.
Okay, that's a good question because in most literatures now, people count those Aragas as migrants. Some of them do not even leave the country. They have been arrested on the shores. Are they migrants? Migrants are an international definition. You cross a border, but they have been apprehended, arrested on the shore. So they are not migrants. Those who were drowned in the Mediterranean Sea, they are migrants to be, and they are not migrants. They are not even one day outside. They have crossed no border now, just on the sea. So you see, when you fix the data, you put them all together, you can see efforts that have been deployed by the country of origin to stop people from migrating. And if you count only the stock of migrants in the European countries, so you are looking only on one side of the problem. So you can't deny what these countries of origins have expanded about the controlling security forces, all the coast, or even on the shores, or even by sea during the sea, on the shores, on the national shores, you see. And those who drowned are missing within international level. So they did not arrive. They are not migrants yet. According to international definition, should we change this international definition? Why not? Because as we note also, United Nations is trying to change now revise the definitions, because in these definitions of border migration wasn't considered as migrant, was not statistically relevant to international migration. But during the COVID, we see that many people, they have no usual residence in the country of where they work, in their host countries, to travel each day from border. But when border were closed, then we discover that many border workers travel, either return each week or daily, but they work in other countries, in the host countries. This have been seen from Canada and US, and also within Europe, close borders from Germany or Italy with France. So there are many people who are working in the borders, but are they migrants? They have no usual residence. They are not counted as migrants, but they bring remittances to the country of origin. Okay?
Thank you very much for your answer. I think that this is, a very fascinating debate. The definition of who is a migrant and who is not. I don't know if Ricardo, please, you have the floor.
I will just intervene because I am there. And first of all, thanks, Musette, for being there in spite of the pandemic. But it was the intention was to visit us. But in any case, we are very grateful that we have the opportunity to listen and to learn a bit more about flows, about Maghreb countries, but also Egypt, because you incorporate also North African, as you mentioned, and all these data are very instructive. I was just wondering what kind of information, knowledge we can build from this data. I try to just to keep two kind of ideas and just to share with you if they are correct, and maybe you have much more arguments than me. But in any case, I was just wondering that if somebody from the near future, post-pandemic, I would say, analyze this data without knowledge about the pandemic, then we can conclude that the pandemic has had no impact on flows. And this is very strong argument because intuitively we can think that flows are stopped because of the pandemic, as you say at one moment of your intervention, because of the visa and the flight and so on. And then but this does not happen, and then that means that flows come from and they have through non-formal routes, and this is why they don't. And then from this point of view, I think it is very instructive from the data to see that. COVID may worsen the condition of migrants. This is something that we know when they stay at the receiving countries, and the vulnerability and precariousness is worse for countries. But for the flows, there is not an impact, a direct impact. I don't know if this is something that we can go into more. But in any case, this is something that I see here. And another question, but maybe this question is because I am from political science, and then I tend to think from the top down, and then another learning information from your data is that in spite of policies, because you don't introduce policies, but sometimes you speak about the policy, but it was not the main focus of your intervention. But in spite of control policies, in spite of filters, whatever a filter, your flows doesn't stop. And then if we analyze European Union and policies in these terms, then we are in phase of a great failure of in terms of control. Control doesn't stop flows, but works on the condition of and then from this point of view, I think it is also very interesting to see that. Apart from that, I have just a question, but I was just wondering, because I perfectly know that the flows continue, but doesn't increase. This is something interesting to see. Doesn't increase as we may expect, and then I used to think that one hypothesis why it doesn't increase as we may expect is maybe because all these countries, North African countries, are becoming buffer countries. And then migrants doesn't cross the Mediterranean, but migrants continue from Africa, maybe continue to come, but stop at Morocco, because I know Morocco has an African issue in this moment. Algeria, Libya, and so on, and Egypt also with Sudanese and so on. And then from this point of view, maybe it could be interesting. I don't know what will be your hypothesis in this case, but because you know better than me the data. But to compare flows toward through the Mediterranean with the increase of migrants staying at Morocco, Algeria, and so on. And we can maybe compare them and to see, okay, flows are not, but the African question of migration in the Mediterranean remains, but instead of being a European issue, it becomes a Morocco, Algerian issue. Are you following me? And then this kind of decentralization of the agenda of migration in terms from Europe to North African countries become maybe an issue for the coming years. And this data, I think, would be interesting to compare. But in any case, I have not more information than just to suggest there's this kind of thoughts, and maybe you have more data from that.
Okay, thank you, Ricard. I think you have raised the two big questions, because pandemic or not, political or not, democracy or not, the flows continue. The flows continue even through the Med countries, the Med seas. Why? In this presentation, I've noticed stress on the main causes of migration. The root causes doesn't interest me. What I just point out, we will have to see how the migrant continues, even with policies. Even Morocco has a policy to intercept African coming to Morocco, but Morocco provide irregular migration as well as other countries to Europe with the highest rate, and Algeria too. Tunisia as many irregular migration from Tunisia went to Italy. We have also crossing Libya, which is now under chaos, but we have no real data. From Egypt, it has been some time. Even Egypt has stopped irregular migration from the Egyptian source, but to cross Egypt to Libya and go to the Mediterranean. So the question is, why flows continue? What can be done? Should we try to stop the flows or not? In my opinion, we must organize the flow. Organize it on a regular basis. Because if there is no regular frame venues for migrations, irregular migration will persist. Okay? The frame I developed in 12 steps crossing the Mediterranean, we can replicate the same frame from other parts. This can replicate from Africa crossing the North African countries, coming to North Africa. So instead of having how many people drowned in the Mediterranean Sea, we'll have people died crossing on the Sahara deserts. And you will have another smugglers from Africa. It will be not smugglers from all African countries, because it doesn't come only from the Sahel countries, not only from Mali, from Niger, but they come from Chad, from Burkina Faso, from Cameroon, from Republic of Congo. So very deep in Africa. And this is, there is a natural mobility of people in West Africa. In West Africa, there is an agreement of free movement of persons within the West Africa. So people coming from Chad, Burkina Faso to Mali, they are free to move there, but crossing with Malian documents to Algeria or from Niger, with false documents to Algeria or to Morocco or to Libya. This is the biggest challenge for our countries, because North African countries, we are on the two sides. We'll have to stop migrant, our own national coming, crossing the Med countries, and they'll have also to control and perhaps organize migrants coming from deep Africa to the south, to the North African countries. I think the frame gives me a logical step, which everyone, and what I say, we need more data, more collection of data, more. Probably I'll have to develop these steps, and it will be probably a chapter in our handbook, how to capture irregular migration. Because if we look at what we have up to now, there are some 5 or 6 authors, analysts who have tried to measure irregular migrants. But most analyses which have been done these last 20 years, they did not have data. And now we are coming with open data. Now it will be perhaps the best opportunity for us, not only to use open data, but also to use a big data to seize irregular migration. So it is up to us now to give a very good, clear, transparent flows of irregular migrants. either within Europe countries or from MENA countries and North Africa to Europe. I don't know whether I replied to your questions, Ricardo.
Professor Musette, we have several questions from the audience, so I would like to read some of them. So I have the first question by Berta Alvarez. He would like to know if you have an explanation of the discrepancy among Eurostat and national data on irregular migrants. Doesn't Eurostat build its statistics in this respect on national data? In any case, how do they come to an estimation?
This is what I've discovered. As for me, I've always trusted Eurostat data, but I see what have been done now, particularly in Spain, which I read a very good study, scientific study, which has been done because in Spain you have a very good system to collect data, because most migrants, they can register at the municipalities for social services. So regular migrants, true regular migrants are captured by Spain. The national data, I think, is the best data up to now. If this study gave us, there is approximately more than 400,000 migrants in irregular situation. This is a reality. Data collected by Eurostat, they are data filtered by national agencies. But as you know, irregular migrants, the data may change from one month to the other, because migrant does not stay in one place, they're always on the move. And Spain, as we know, is used also as a transit country for migrants coming to Spain, but not to stay in Spain. Perhaps they may stay some 2 or 3 months and then try to cross to go to France or to other European countries, particularly from North Africa. So what we need, as we've seen also in Italy, what I've said in this paper, I say, if you change in one step, all the data will be changed. As we've seen during the COVID, what happened? We have launched a natural regularization in Spain, in Italy, and in Portugal. And within Italy, we saw that nearly 700,000 migrants were in irregular situation. That is the same data given by Eurostat for the E28 countries, you see? Some 2 years later, because data I've gathered, it is from 2019. But now what we've got data from Italy, it is recent data 2021. But we have no assessment how many migrants have been regularized. So we'll continue to follow and to see what happened. Okay. Great. So we must be very careful about global data and national data. Okay.
So I now would like to read you another question that we have from Steve Chetse. He says, this might be a complicated question to answer, but would you have any insight from the African Union or government countries sharing borders with the Maghreb, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger, on what is currently being done in order to stop the phenomenon of clandestine migration from the Sahel? the smugglers.
This was my study. My first study was migrant from the Sahel some 15 years ago, but still, I'm still following, and I'm in contact with all my colleagues in Niger, in Mali, and also with Cameroon in Senegal. We are working together, and we know quite well that Africa is developing many policies on migration. As you know, the African Union itself, we are starting collecting data now with a new observatory, which will be located in Morocco, where the African Observatory. So we'll have the first data collected. We have a research center in Mali. We are doing some research about Africans crossing from deep Africa going to the north. But the Sahel question is rather complicated because within the Sahel countries, and you know, the political situation is rather unstable, and many African migrants, they were retired from Libya and come back to Mali, Niger, and for Algeria, the south of Algeria, Mali, Niger, the Sahel, we have a specific population, a Tuareg population living over there, where there is free movement for these people, since it is a historical movement. As the Tuareg people, they move freely from one country to another. But when it comes from other countries, from Burkina Faso, from Chad, from Cameroon, coming, mixing with the Tuareg population and crossing the borders to Algeria or to Morocco, this is a challenge, because as for Algeria, we have also some security challenge with Al-Qaeda acting on these fields. And what we can say, we hope the best for the Sahel people. They have now another five state group informal discussion. Probably will have new data. And what we know also with Sahel people, there is a slavery in the Sahel countries. In Mauritania, it still exists. In Libya, we have noted it. So these are kinds of migration which needs more in-depth studies. It is not some 10,000 or 15,000 people coming from Africa to North Africa. This is not a very big challenge, because most Africans migrate in Africa itself. There's only some probably 10% of Africans who go to Europe. But most Africans in Europe are from North Africa. This is due to colonization. So Africa, we have got a meeting, the Valletta meeting, I think, with European countries and Africa. But we need more data to be collected. I hope with African Observatory in Morocco, we are going to have a clear account of how many migrants really crossed the borders. Okay.
Professor Musette, I have another question. Well, first a comment and then a question. So, can Keira, I can see her last name here. She says about the issue of irregular migration of Algerian citizens and non-citizens, this is sub-Saharan migrants. She says that in her fieldwork, neither fines, detention, nor incarceration serve as deterrent as departures continue to take place. So this is the comment. And then I have a question that is related to, your previous answers. From the, more the conceptual part of your paper, what is the difference between the 12 steps model and the 2 steps model, the aspirations ability to steps models? Are they compatible or are they contradictory?
I feel this 12-step model, I think we have recent data which gave it relevancy. The 2-step model, regular or irregular, does not stand no more. Because, as I said, within the 12 steps, we have the first 3 steps, as it is desire, preparation, and decision. These 3 steps concern all types of migrants, whether regularly or irregularly. When it comes in the black box, here everything is unstable. We don't know what happened within these stables, within these 6 steps. Because there is another actor which is absent in my presentation. This actor is the smugglers. Smugglers, this is a criminal business. And all countries, we are responsible for these criminals, to tackle these criminals. Because they exist also in Europe. They are transnational networks. The papers, if we have the false document prepared by Africans from Mali coming to North Africa, in Spain, Italy, in France, we can have false papers from smugglers to travel within European countries. So these networks, these criminal networks exist also in Europe. But up to now, as I said in my presentation, in Algeria, we have stopped smugglers. In Morocco, we have stopped smugglers. In Tunisia, we have stopped smugglers. Within Europe, how many smugglers, how many networks have been dismantled? Do we have any data? Who were the smugglers in Europe who printed false documents for migrants? This is a very, very big business. Millions of euros. But up to now, I have collected some data. Up to now, this will be the 13th step, which make me clear that we are all responsible, not only country of origin, but country of departure, but also the host countries. We are responsible and we have to tackle this question of smugglers. Okay? And I've told you, we can try to replicate it. My model, the 12-step model can be replicated either Latin America or from Southern Asia. I've read what O'Cliffe and others have done on irregular maritime migration in Australia. So we can replicate this model, and we'll have a very good snapshot of the flows, the stock and flows, inflows and outflows of migrants. Okay, I don't know whether I've replied to your questions, Juan Carlos.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Musette. We still have time for some more questions. So if you don't mind, I can read you another question from the audience. The question that I have here is, it says, do you think that the migratory networks are more effective than the migratory policies, which for several decades fight against the illegal migratory phenomenon? This is the question from one member of the audience.
Up to now, most countries has not developed legal pathways for our regular migrants. We are all our countries, we are fighting irregular migrants, but we have done nothing, I think, to organize regular pathways for migrations. And this is the main issue. If we want to go forward, to organize, unless we have some interest that irregular migration continues. In my own country, Algeria, we have a migration policies. We have regularization process. We have naturalization process. We are imported migrants from overseas, circular migrants, but no regular pathways. In Morocco, Moroccan had tried to put a policy, regularization given some 6 months, 1 year. But even with this, many Africans in Morocco, even regularized, tried to cross the border to go to Spain. And this, we are seeing it during the COVID. So what we need is just organizing this labor migration, because migration is a main issue of migration. It's labor migration. Labor market migration must be organized, where people can work crossing the border daily, weekly, yearly, on a contract basis. And this is blocked up to now. If we don't have a global labor migration, this is a new project which I started 6 months ago, working about labor migration in North Africa. And perhaps within this we can see we'll have some new patterns of organizing regular migration, not only high scale, but also low scale. Because for high scale, we have an organization. I've written some 2 years ago, I think, a brain drain from North Africa. And we see that many countries have policies just to attract medical officers, engineers, not high level. Labor migration, high level, is quite organized, though it is not ethical. We have no, we can, when we look from resources, from human resources, we can take them from anywhere. And we'll not mind whether these hospitals will be closed when we take all these doctors out. We're not mind about this. So there are some ethical grounds. This international labor market must be revised too. But more so, it is This is a paradox also with a democratic system, northern democratic systems. A labor market needs also the low level, but is it organized? In what ways? And from where? It will be very good to dream about open borders everywhere, but we know every one of us, we are stick to our national identity, our national labor market. Okay, this is, I think, the best way. Organized labor migration, all types of migration, or probably this will drop down irregular migration.
Great, thank you very much, Professor Musette, for your answer. This invites to think in terms of the global governance of migration, and all these efforts that in the last year has been developing in this field. This provokes me your answer, these thoughts about how to link it to this elusive goal of a global governance of migration. I have a last final question from a member of the audience. He says, how to explain the silence of the countries where, if I understand correctly, irregular migration originated in the face of the many deaths that occur in the Mediterranean Sea? This is the question that I have here.
Yes, this is one of the questions very important to note. Why the government are still have taken no measures to stop. But I don't know, really, I don't know whether other countries, as for Algeria, I think, as I've told you some 2 years ago, the Ministry of Interior, we organized a national seminar on Harga problem. And they asked me to deliver. That is where I stopped developing these 12 steps. So national countries, as for Algeria, Morocco, or even Tunisia, they know quite well what is going. But we are practically on the ground where there are two forces. The state, the migrants, and the third one, which is very, very important, is the smugglers. But the smugglers, are they supported somewhere else? Are they criminal organization? What can state do? What can we do against these criminal organizations? I've told you in my first part, but I have not developed the legal issues, but probably I will have to develop it more about the Palermo Conventions on Transnational Migrants. Have we any report from either European countries or African countries on smugglers? Up to now, I've not seen any report, in-depth report about smugglers. What have been done up to now is counting how what are the benefits of this business? Perhaps this protocol, the third protocol of the Palermo Convention, needs to be more developed, more imposed on the countries who have signed this convention. I'll try to go deeper in this to see what are the countries who have produced the papers and developed studies to tackle criminal networks on their, because this is the only way to know how the states are responding, whether they are silent or whether they are doing so. Because in this business, I know there are many, many interests in this. It is not only for smuggling, it is also for migrant traffics, for narcotics, for arms, for terrorism. This is a mixture, a very hot mixture, which we cannot during this time lives develop furthermore. But anyway, I'll take a look on it and come with probably some notions, some measures, whether we are silent. NGOs are acting. We have some NGOs acting. I've attended a meeting recently in Geneva, and I told them why no European countries, or many European countries, have refused those NGOs to bring those who have been saved in the Med countries. Malta, you refused, Italy refused. Spain finally accepted to board some migrants. They have been staying how many days? And told me the state remained silent. And North African countries also refused. What's going on then? Humanitarian lives of migrants have no price, worth nothing to do. I don't know. But I would like to see this convention, because this is the only convention, I think, which we can ask for states to provide a report. What if they have ratified this convention? They will have to provide a report and to see what they have done, or else they are complicit. Yeah, there is compromise with some. But this is a very good question. No? And Carl, you will have to do something on this. Okay.
No, I'm just thinking about not only your concern that is a legitimate and important concern, but not how to fight by also who produces nuclears also, who produce nuclears. And I remember also some people from Libya that says, okay, we are fully aware of nuclear, but nuclear is produced by European Union. It is not we that we are producing smugglers. It is European Union and the policies of the European Union that is producing smugglers. And then from this point of view, there are many dimensions there also.
Yeah.
But in any case, this kind of migration industry, because this is an industry, is a big concern, of course, because we are not speaking about commodities, but about humans.
Humans, yeah, you're right.
Okay, so I think that our time is almost up, and I don't see more questions for the audience. So Professor Musette, I would like to thank you on behalf of GRITIM and the EuroMed-MICH platform and EMED for your presentation, for your time in answering our questions, for informing us of the situation in Africa related to migration, also presenting this 12 steps model that definitely can travel to other contexts around the world. All the best, and thank you again for your time, and thank you to everyone for participating in this session. Oops, we cannot hear you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And